artist, yeah.
Fine artist, visual artist, yeah. So I'll let Linda obviously tell you more about her. We do have a speaker next week. It's an architect. It's Simon Warren, and he's also the head of the BA Honours in Architecture at Leeds Met. So he's both a practitioner and an academic. So yeah, that's next week, and that'll be the final one of this semester. And then the speaker programme will begin sometime towards the end of January next semester. We'll let you know.
All right, thank you, Steve, and thank you for inviting me here. I've called this talk a work in progress because I don't know if any of you heard the recent Grayson Perry Reef lectures, and he told that little story about, you know, the arts being something where, you know, you just need to get on the bus and stay on it. You know, don't keep getting off along the way, you know, because it takes a long time to get somewhere for your ideas to develop and so on. And I think from my own experience, I always feel like, you know, I'm just getting a little bit further, you know, but when you look back, it seems to have taken an awful long time, and you're never quite as far as you hope to be. But I think that's, you know, that's not just me, that's most people who I talk to feel a bit like that. I'll give you a really brief little bit of autobiographical background about me. I live in Cleethorpes. I went to art college very briefly when I was 16, 17 to do a foundation course. They wanted me to go on to Central St Martin's. I was going to go and do fashion. But I grew up in a really kind of poor background, and my parents hadn't been to London, none of my friends had been to London. It was just like saying they were going to send me to Mars, you know. So I wasn't ready at all. It just wasn't part of my cultural experience that I had the kind of confidence and wherewithal to go and do that. So I continued in the things that I was doing, which was sort of singing in bands and going out with my mates and stuff like that, and got a job in a factory and then in shops and stuff like that. And by the time I got to about 30, I was in a relationship, a long-term relationship, and the guy started doing Open University and said, well, why don't you do something? And I said, no, well, I can't do it, I'm sick. And he said, no, you're not sick. So I went and did an A-level in English, and I thought, no, he's right, I'm not sick. So then I did 3 years Open University in the arts, the Art Foundation course, got a diploma, and thought, well, hang on, you know, I'm working full-time, I'm studying at degree level, you know, to a good standard as well, getting decent marks. I don't consider myself, or I didn't consider myself to be particularly academic. So I thought, well, I've always been able to draw and paint. Studying Open University unlocked something, if you like. It told me what fine art could be for, what art could be for, what it could say, what it could help you do, what its effect was on the world as well, the wider world. And so it just really sort of seemed to open the floodgates in my mind, and I thought, well, okay, not particularly talented academically, I don't feel, but I've got this facility, if you like, and so I'm going to work really hard. If I work as hard at that as I've worked at OU, I can get somewhere. So a few years later, that relationship dead in the water, living with a composer, and decided to go and do an MA at Lincoln. I think it was called University of Art, Architecture and Design. I finished that in 2007. And when I completed that, what happened at the time was, based where I am in Cleethorpes, there's not a lot of opportunity to network and so on. We didn't have any galleries. I think we had our first independent gallery opened in 2006. We had our second one open in 2008, just after I finished my MA, and that was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. It's Abbey Walk Gallery in Grimsby. If you get the chance to go, I think actually a couple of the artists from there have some work on show here somewhere at the moment, because they're graduates of Hull. You know, that was sort of an unexpected opportunity that I couldn't have planned for. And so from being someone who worked in factories and shops, I've gone and gone into the arts. I'm a practicing fine artist, if you like. I teach, or I'm teaching less now, but was teaching and curating, writing funding applications, big projects, making things happen. So I'm 49 now, so that's taken a bit of time to be able to get that fair. So, as I say, work in progress. I have two main curatorial projects, both of them really sort of sneakily. I set them up to embrace my practice a bit. The majority of my practice these days is based around self-portraiture in some way. But I've always been very interested in human form. So the Head and Whole project was set up to bring artists and academics who have research that is relevant to the visual arts and the subject of human form in some way, to exhibit work, disseminate their research and so on. And the Nature and Landscape project as well, because most of my own work is based on me being in a particular place, the place where I live. That's me, that's my shadow. That lovely bit of frost twisting up there. The shadow is in a lot of my pieces of work in some way. When I put it into an actual piece of a painting or a drawing or something, I'll sit down actually because you can see my shadow. That is sort of part of me. That's an expression, if you like, for me, of being someone who suffers from depression sometimes. And so there's a brilliant book about the shadow actually, if anyone's interested. Come and ask me later and I'll give you the title and so on. So this is a piece of work which is, I'll give you a very quick whiz through a few things. Painting and stitch. Painting and stitch. These are done with jet and silver point. I'll go back to this. But everything in some way is sort of referring to me in that particular place in some way. It's a twin series. These are not. I'll go back to that. That gives you a sort of whiz around the quick whiz visually. So this piece is a self-portrait that I did probably about three years ago now. I like self-portraits to look a bit like me but not be too photographically like me or too realistic. I'm very interested in mark making, and these sort of painted pieces, I tend to call them painted constructions. They're created using linen and stitch, and you can't really see it on here, but the sort of, it's not accurate. You probably just see that top area just under the left-hand side of the hair there, a mark under there. It's not, I'm sort of stitched in to my place, if you like. That's how I'm thinking about it. But also in using this method of creating art, it's also talking about, for me, the passing of time, being human. Some of it is quite personal in terms of the grief of my mother having passed away a few years ago, which, you know, was still quite raw when I did these pieces. And the way that I use the materials means that although I'm using the best quality that I can, you shouldn't really use this combination, and it will gradually deteriorate. And I like that idea that, you know, that it might change, it goes off, it has a life. If you stick it in a room where it's really, really hot, you know, it's going to deteriorate much quicker, or really sunny, it's going to deteriorate probably much faster than it would do if I'd used acrylics. But I like the circularity of using linen with linen stitch, sometimes silk and cotton, oil paint, linseed oil. Linseed oil comes from linen, from the flax plant. It's almost like circularity. You know, I'm quite interested in this idea about where we come from and where we're going.
So Linda, is that because the oil paint will rot the canvas and rot the
Yeah,
surface?
if you don't prime it, it will get through eventually, you know. So I size it with rabbit skin glue size, but yeah, it will get through eventually. In this piece of work, which was actually shown in King's Place, actually, as part of the Ruth Burchard self-portrait show a couple of years ago, the first one that they did, I was really interested. I had to buy that dress to make that painting. I've done this several times. I've got a wonderful wardrobe that I hardly ever wear outside of my paintings. It's a Ted Baker dress, and what I loved about it was all the birds are on the outside of the cages. And because I've been feeling quite grief-stricken, and I have this journey that I try and go on most of the time, particular walk that I try and go on most of the time, which sort of helps me creatively and psychologically and all kinds of stuff. I was feeling at the time like I liked the freedom of these birds, you know, as though it was something lifting, and that's what it meant to me, at the time that I made it. This is another dress that I had to buy for the photograph. This piece now is in the UCS collection, East Contemporary Art, which has just been set up in Sussex University. This is a study for a larger piece which I'm still working on. I don't know if anyone can spot an art historical reference there or two in there. Maybe in the pose, or well, it's the pose from Botticelli's Venus, but it's the other way around, you know. And so there's a little bit of a joke there because I'm kind of this elderly, becoming person, rather than this, you know, lovely, snaky, young, nubile woman. I'm in Cleethorpes. She was there, coming out of her shell. This is actually a scallop shell, which is the symbol of pilgrimage, because I sometimes feel that this walk that I take backwards and forwards most days is a bit of a pilgrimage, in a way, to go to a place where I feel very at rest, if you like. And eventually there'll be wind farms and things like that on the piece to sort of deepen the reference. You can see here in these pieces, you can probably just see the shadows of some of the stitching. These are three sort of fairly small pieces as a triptych, and again, so these are bits of the stitch, and the stitch is taken from a symbol that I tend to use as a broken shell. It's probably a bit of a cliche. Now, Grayson says, and he's right, you know, artists are supposed to try and avoid cliches, you know, but in some ways we create them as well. And I see the broken shell as being a sort of reference again to my ageing, and actually, you know, very personally to my not having been able to have children. So that it's actually sort of traced out in here as well. It tends to make its appearance in quite a bit of my work. These pieces are made using silver point. If you don't know what that is, I shall just tell you, it's actually drawing with a piece of silver. And what I've done is I've made my own gesso to size paper with, drawn on it in silver point, in graphite, and also in jet. The jet is a piece of jet that I picked up off the beach. I thought it was coal when I started drawing with it. It's another kind of autobiographical element, if you like. But I took it to Whitby and had it authenticated, and it's actually a piece of jet. But I realised it's going to be a small... I'd bought it to show you. It's beautiful now. It's beautifully polished. Been using it since about 2006, this one piece. If anyone knows of any drawings in jet, please let me know, because I can't find any anywhere. I know there must... You know, I can't be the only person doing this or having done this. But I don't know if you can see in this light that there's a kind of brownish hue on these, and that is the jet, that kind of brown tint on there. The pieces all have what I kind of see as the horizon line, the line of the water, coming up to this area. Again, it's kind of a bit of a macabre reference in some way, but also it's also a reference to, you know, this bit that's going, because I'm getting old now, so you can kind of see all the wrinkles and crinkles and so on, the passing of time. Time and tide, if you want to use the cliche as well, although I didn't really mean it to be like that, but it was kind of pointed out to me afterwards. And also, again, I had a close family member who actually, unfortunately, committed suicide in this place, you know, so it's on my mind. These have sort of developed out of these pieces, so there's still jet being used, and silver point. Gold leaf here. I don't know if any of you went to Studio 11 recently for their Figure It Out show, but these pieces were in there. And now it's combined with oil paints as well. I'm actually physically trying to create the shadow that I spoke about in there. And they arose from these pieces which I did. I don't know, you might be able to see, there's a sort of a line of text there. I bought a book for £1, which is written in, I think, an 1881 edition of a book called White Wings by William Black. And it just turned out to be the story of a young woman in a rites of passage tale of her going out in a boat, and a guardian and the crew and everything, painting. And so I felt, well, I'm probably at the stage where I'm coming back into my harbour now. She's kind of gone out, just fledging her wings and going out. So I've been rearranging the texts in that to also take me away compositionally from just looking at that place and the colours and it getting sort of too monotonous. It's sort of inspiring me to use different palettes and try different techniques and so on. But also I'm almost kind of rewriting the book and making it more relevant to me, more personal to me. These are a few of those. It's going to be an installation eventually. These are monoprints and pencil. I do these when these are the kind of things I can do in front of the telly when I feel the need. If I've not been getting enough time in the studio or something, I can work on the pencil aspect. And I try and fit in. I always feel as though I'm sort of slightly schizophrenic, but they're called the twin set, and my mum had a miscarriage while she was having me, so apparently I had a twin. So I like to use that as a bit of device to, I hope, make some fairly interesting work. There's loads of these as well. That's going to be an installation when I finish anything. I like multiples. So when I finished my MA, I sat down on the 19th of October 2007, I remember where I was, and I wrote a list about all the things, the good things that came out of it that I wanted to hang on to, and also some of the stuff that you felt you tried but maybe it wasn't you. And you know, so I wanted to keep looking at human form a lot. I realised that I'm very interested in faces and the head area in particular. I'm interested in creating layers within a piece of work, as well as shadows. So these, again, I think of my work as kind of drawn and painted constructions rather than actually just drawings and paintings. So the 19th of October 2007 is when I had the idea of combining these techniques. You can see a couple close up there. These are quite small, these are 8 by 10 inches. That's the first one, self-portrait. I originally, well, it turned into a project. I ended up doing 200, so you can see most of them sort of piled up there, taller than me. And a lot of what was interesting me at that time, it's the act of doing, and I think that's the same for an awful lot of fine artists. For me, it's contact with materials, and who I am when I'm making the work in a way. And I know you know, many of you will understand that. It's how you feel when you're making the work. You're happiest when you're creating. But what I found was loads of people were really interested in this, so I was able to unexpectedly get sponsorships. People paid me £150 to be part of the project, and they came and had sittings, and I drew them and took photographs, and then I gave them a drawing, and then in return for all that I could you know, use their features in these images, in these pieces. I also got Arts Council funding for that as well, but that was really important, you know, because that was match funding. I was able to say 25 people have already paid me £150. I've got another 20 people waiting to pay me that. So not only did that show that there was a will to have the project and that people believed in the quality of it, it gave you that very valuable match funding that you will need when you get out there and start doing things outside, if you're not already. And then somewhat tangentially, I was invited to work with a couple of composers and a filmmaker in putting art into churches. What you can see in the foreground here, this was a problem for me. Because most of my work now is self-portraiture, and it was like, well, and about my place where I live and am located. And I thought, well, how am I going to put that into different places? But what I did was I sourced a biography of Kurt Cobain. I don't know if you've heard of Kurt Cobain, and you probably know that how he met his ends, and you know, some of that was to drugs, but also it's you know, down to depression and so on. And I spent a few months blanking out every word of this biography called Heavier Than Heaven, which was such a nice title to go in a church. And it you know, so obviously that kind of blanking out in ink again, and the blackness I felt, you know, worked really well. But I did it as a kind of private meditation, if you like, in recognition of people who suffer from depression and so on. It has its own lead-lined antique box, a bit like a lead-lined coffin. And these are two paintings in the background where they have really dark clouds in them, and they're sky scenes from the place where I live. So that's ways in which I still put myself into the work. You can see them there installed in the church. Time check. So moving on to the funding side of it, I decided to go for my first funding application in 2005. That was just as I was about to start my MA, which was very difficult actually, because then I had something that I had to produce, but the MA, of course, is challenging you all the time. So I was very kind of torn with the things that I said that I would do for the Arts Council project, and then how, you know, where the MA was taking me. But I suppose, you know, these pieces were the start of, you know, this wanting to work on something that looks as though it's raw linen, were the start of it. These came out of me when I just discovered that not only could I not have children, but I couldn't get quite into my red velvet dress that I'd only ever worn once. So they're a little bit about you know, the fading of womanhood and the grief to do with that sort of childless element. And I got about, I think it was about 4,500 from the Arts Council to create a body of work. I made about 30 pieces. These are 3 of the strongest pieces. Most of it now has been destroyed actually, because I didn't think that it stood up well after I'd done it. Exhibit it and promote it. So for any of you who are thinking of, it doesn't have to be necessarily fine art. If you're thinking of something, you've got an idea that you want to take out there, that's the kind of things that you can get money for. Materials, time off if you're having to teach, you can get a little bit of money to pay you for making up for that loss of earnings. Promotion, maybe higher costs of a gallery, and so on. Or premises to show your work. You don't have to be, you know, a painter to do that. And Poor Project, as I say, I had the match funding with that, which was great, and it's been shown in several places. Most recently, Leeds School of Design, where they needed me to put them up with Velcro, which was great until it was so hot in there, people, my lipstick melted in my handbag. My lipstick melted, and then they came in the next day and all the pieces were on the floor because the glue on the Velcro had melted as well. So, environment is very important. These pieces wouldn't have lasted long if they were in that environment all the time. So, elements of funding for that. I got funds for the time and materials to make the work, cataloguing and photography. You know, this is something that's very important, that you can evidence your work, that you can show people what you're doing to get it out there. If you've got a big body of work like that, then it's very difficult to get someone who is happy to put 200 pieces on their wall just so that you can photograph it. You know, so you might have to hire somewhere, but until you've got it on the wall and made the images of it, you can't get it anywhere else. You can't get an opportunity. So that's something that you need to think about with it. Promotional budget, as I mentioned before, and as I say, the cost for that initial exhibition, so that I could make some material to try and further promote it and get people to show it in different places. As an aside, something that has happened as well, in writing funding applications for myself and for the projects that I work on, I've also written funding applications for individual artists and galleries. So this is a project by an artist called Eileen Bunn, who she's actually just coming to the end of it. She got funding for a year. I think I put this on there. I don't think I did. No. She got funding for a year to create something like 20 pieces of work, show it, promote it. She hadn't had a solo show before. It's really hard to get your first solo show, you know. So again, that is something that you may potentially be able to get Arts Council funding for. The nature of landscape is one of my curatorial projects. The first one really was inspired by Abbey Walk Gallery, just having been open a while, and I had a studio there and was working with them and teaching there as well. I knew Richard Kenton Webb from a summer school that I did at the Slade a few years ago. Jerry Lee I did my M.A. with, and then I saw David Ainley's work in Derbyshire when I went to have something horrible done to my teeth and I needed to go and look at some art. And I just thought, you know, for a place like Grimsby, people, you call something a landscape exhibition, people expect to see trees and mountains and, you know. This was an exhibition without a horizon line, without a tree in it, without any sky in it. And I found it, you know, quite a challenge to do, and it was very well received. Richard Kenton Webb, he grinds all his own pigments, makes all his own pigments and all his own paint himself. David Ainley is very interesting. His pieces are based on mining, and so these actual marks across there are done from maps of mines where, you know, the landscape is starting to take over again. So if you view it aerially, there's kind of scars on the land. But also, he's very interested in process. So he likes to think about the artists, the people who've been mining, chipping away. You know, these old, before they started using explosives and the new technology, they might get an inch a day. You know, and so what he does is he paints his board all one colour, and then he scores into it various different blades, so that because apparently a Wilko's blade makes a different kind of score to a B&Q blade and things like that. And then he'll paint over it again with a different colour, and then he'll do it all again. So there's actually, it's almost again a kind of private performance, but it's mindful labour as well, in recognition of the work that miners do. Jerry Lee's work, he's based much more on the idea of this particular journey in and out of where he lives, and how that makes him feel. And so, you know, it's quite abstract work. And then Judith Tucker asked us if she could exhibit with us. Now, Judy is a figurative artist, whereas all the rest is sort of fairly abstract. But her work was so interesting. This was based on places. Well, her background is as her parents were, or her grandmother was a German Jew who came over to Britain in the war, and so she's been going back and revisiting places, especially places where the Nazis used for their leisure, and looking at them now. Most of them are very overgrown and actually quite beautiful in their own way. So for that first Nature of Landscape project, that was the funding success of that depended on the quality of all the practitioners involved. You know, most of them exhibiting nationally. Obvious progression for all of them involved. I was working with Abbey Walk Gallery's group of artists as well. So all of the lead artists were giving tutorials to those. They were giving tutorials actually to people from, let me see, second and third year students at East Coast School of Art and Design. So that's where the support from other agencies came in. We had an exhibition there as well. So there was a lot of people who benefited from that project. Value for the audience and the audience development, because there was a series of talks and workshops. Value of money for the Arts Council. But also in that, the Abbey Walk Gallery artists, I should have bought one actually, you could have had one of the Nature and Landscape books actually, I'll have to send you one. A book came out of it, which had the Abbey Walk Gallery artists in the back, so they hadn't been published before, so there's a legacy to the project, and that was the first publishing for them. And at the end of the project, we exhibited in Nottingham. So quite a difficulty if you come from the Cleethorpes area, and possibly from here, is creating these networks, and it's getting your work out as well. So you can probably see from these projects that what I decided to do was bring work to us, bring amazing people to us, because I knew I had a good chance of getting funding for that, whereas no one's going to give me, you know, a couple of £100 to go to London on a regular basis and network with other people. So that was part of the madness behind my method. So I'm currently halfway through an excavations and estuaries project. Just have a quick time check. This time I've been able to commission Judith Tucker to come and create a body of work in collaboration with Harriet Tarlow, who is a poet, based on the south bank of the Humber. If you live where we live, you see loads of Tweed paintings of Dock Tower and donkeys on the beach and things like that. And so, apart from myself, I didn't really know anyone who was doing any serious work based there, so I thought I would commission some. Their first exhibition, the first exhibition was this April at Abbey Walk Gallery, and alongside their initial studies, I managed to access work from the Arts Council collection. We're the first gallery in North East Lincolnshire to be able to do that, which is not a big thing as far as other people are concerned, but for us it's, yeah, you know. And again, the Arts Council like that. This is work by Susan Durges. It's done with a kind of sand pigment, and she puts the pigment on a metal plate and sends sound through it, and the sound organises the particles into different shapes, the sound frequency, and then she coats a piece of canvas or linen with PVA and puts that on the top and seals it. Absolutely gorgeous. Actually, this doesn't do them. Oh, it's stuck. Ooh.
That's it.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. This is work by David Walker Barker. He's a collector as well as an artist, as you can see from his cabinet here. The exhibition is called Excavations and Estuaries because part of it I wanted it to be a literal excavation of things, and you know, most of the things that we use, unless you're just well, even probably if you're using acrylics actually, but most of the things that we use, whether you're in fashion or fine art, come from the ground in some way. And so his work was a very good expression of that, but I also like this idea of excavating our ideas and our thought processes. David Ailey's work, you saw a piece before, he was in this exhibition as well. The labour on these are actually two pieces which are just graphite pencil drawn with a ruler over and over and over again. This is another Susan Durges pieces. This is cameraless photography. This piece was in the Shadow Catchers exhibition at the V&A, I think it was in 2011. Quite a big piece, big as me. And she goes to a river that is close by where she lives, and when it's frozen, she lays, by moonlight, she lays a piece of photographic paper on top of it, so this is all the patterns of the ice. It just really doesn't do it justice, that at all. And then exposes it to light. But unexpectedly, you know, a couple of things that have happened through working with these people is I've had quite a bit of teaching at Leeds University, which is where Judith Tucker runs the degree programme there. And this is a real positive as well, because people are so behind this project. This is a piece by an artist called George Rowlett. He went to Grimsby School of Art and Design, and that was, you know, back in the 1960s. Now he's a practicing artist in London. You know, he regularly socialises with all the big names like, you know, Kossoff and, you know, knows Auerbach and so on, as you can probably see from the nature of his work. Thoroughly nice bloke. And anyway, I approached him to have some of his Thames paintings. He regularly paints the Thames, of which this is one. But he also likes to go out and about and do different projects, and so he said, well, you know, I can come to you. And we've just, free of charge, because he's believed in the project. He's literally just spent 2 weeks in Cleethorpes. I managed to get him some money towards his expenses from the Heritage Centre, where these pieces are going to be shown next year. And you know, he's a remarkable man. You can just see him there. He didn't like being watched. So I don't know if you can see that. That's his push bike with all his stuff on it. You can find films of him on YouTube. He's 73, 72 or 73. He doesn't drive. He gets everywhere on that push bike. And big paintings like this in panniers. I never want to hear a student complaining about being able to get their paintings about again after seeing what he goes through. He hammers nails into the sides of his boards. Everything's on boards. Hammers nails into the sides so that he can put things face to face. And as you can see, you know, when he gets off his bike, his bike kind of wears up like that. Actually, what happened was his on this trip, his back wheel collapsed because of all the weight that he had on it. But he's an absolute hero, and he's been and done. I think he did about 15 paintings in 2 weeks, and he's just collected them again from my house, and he's probably working on them now, playing about with them again. That's one. I probably shouldn't have that image. I probably shouldn't show you that image. That's one of the works in progress. So don't tell anyone you've seen it. And that's me again, in the same place. So I kind of like that similarity between those two images there. A little bit of a sort of journey around my process. So the next Excavations and Estuaries exhibition happens at the Heritage Centre 8th of July to the 24th of August. It will have in the resulting poems, paintings by Judith Tucker. You can see these are about 7 foot long, these paintings. And the George Rowlett pieces as well in there. And if any of you would like to contact me, or if Hull would like a little show arising from Excavations and Estuaries, you know, I'm sure we could oblige with that. So you can find me, actually you're probably best off finding me on Axis Web. And I just wanted to mention about that. Do you all know about Artist Newsletter Online and Axis Web? Artist Newsletter is quite a good resource. You pay something like £28 a year. You get something like £1 million public liability insurance. But it's worth it just for that, you know. So if you give any workshops and things like that, you know, if your piece of your work falls on someone's head and kills them, you know, you might be covered for that. It's very, very much worth joining just for that. But also, there is, they have interface things, they have activities going on, they have a resource with loads and loads of opportunities. You know, so do have a look at that. The other one is Axis Web. That's a similar amount a year, something again like £28 or £30. You have, you can put your own images up there if you haven't got a website. I think it's easier I do have a website, but you know, I've just found it so complicated. It's, you know, way behind with what's on there. But I find it easier to use. Again, loads of opportunities on there for you to look at. And on both of those, you know, you can get some professional practice by going to exhibitions, reviewing things, posting that. You know, all this looking and seeing and thinking and writing, you know, is very important, and it's starting to help you to build a CV as well, those of you who are maybe, you know, just right at the beginning of things. It's very worth taking those into consideration. And another unexpected opportunity that arose for me was through Facebook. I got a piece shown in New York through a Facebook friend who's works at one of the New York universities, and so I got a piece in a catalogue. It's called Found on Facebook. So this guy went and found what he thought was the best art on Facebook, and I got a New York show out of that. You know, so I am a big advocate of doing things online, even though my work is very tactile and I'm not interested in technology as far as my work goes. I think it's very, very good for getting your work out there. So would anyone like to ask me any questions?
I'll start like I always do.
Okay.
I think maybe it's more of an observation, just to kind of hear something back. I guess you've got that tradition in art history where, you know, if it's painting and it's big and it's bold and it's abstract, it's somehow masculine, like the abstract expressions.
Yeah.
And you certainly incorporate handcraft into your work, which gets labelled as traditionally feminine or feminine.
That's right.
Is that something you think about particularly, or is that irrelevant and irrelevant?
I'm aware of it, but it's not really, I'm not sort of trying to make a statement by that. It really just came out of a need for the contact and for how I wanted things to look, and I found that was the only way that I could make things look how I wanted. When I was doing those 200 pieces and I had an exhibition, I was a bit up against it. I tried doing a few without stitching and it just didn't work for me. Yeah, I'm aware of the implications there, and my work has been described as very feminine, I suppose, because of that, you know. But it's not something that I'm particularly aiming for.
What's interesting is that you're not even just allowed to say it's feminine. It almost sounds like a pejorative term anyway.
It does, doesn't it?
That's very feminine.
Yes.
Whereas to say it's masculine makes it sound brave.
Yeah, I mean, the same person said, you know, about that, one of those first pieces. I mean, he's a professor in fine art, this guy, and he said that my work was very feminine and that this piece was very sentimental, and I was quite insulted, to be honest, because I don't think you could go to a man and say, you know, "Oh, that's sentimental, isn't it?" You know, that's right. Or you know, so yeah, I didn't really like that actually, but he was sort of likening it to Frida Kahlo. And the way that she uses sort of symbolic devices and so on to show natures of her culture, or use them on natures of her culture and where she came from and who she was. And, you know, I suppose there's no kind of getting away from the fact that it's the picture of a woman in a dress. And, you know, maybe it could be seen as sentimental because what I'm doing is, you know, I suppose it's a reasonably attractive painting, and what I'm doing is sort of showing a landscape in the background that is, you know, fairly attractive, and maybe it is sentimental, this idea of, you know, all the birds being on the outsides of the cages and so on, you know, but maybe also it's just actually, you know, that is a dress that I went and bought. It's part of our culture now, or it was when I bought that. And, you know, maybe it doesn't sort of need to go any further than that, you know. And also, you know, I said to him, well, why do you think my hands are like that? And they don't got any idea why my hands are
Is
like
that a
that.
camera then? You've taken it out?
Yeah, it is. You know, and so he was thinking that I'm letting the bird go or something. A few people kind of think that. But it's not. I was just playing around in my studio, photographing myself in the mirror. And I did a drawing and then realised that it just seemed to have a lot more resonance without the camera than it did with it. Made it a bit more mysterious, you know. But it's because I was using technology and I just didn't quite want to put that in there. So anyway, you know, he liked that, so that was the one that I put into the competition. It got to London, so I'm happy. Yes.
Why are you not doing it for online?
I am actually at the moment trying to do some pieces in combination from life and from drawings that I've done, because I'm trying to move a little bit further away from the likeness. You know, the reason why I gave you one of these pieces for the poster is that this is more where I feel I'm going. But I find that if well, part of it is a physical problem. Part of it is I'm starting to have problems from spending ages like this. You know, and so I've actually got a triptych on the go, which are about me entering my 50th year. And they're working in combination from the drawings in the mirror and from me looking in the mirror. But I'm just finding that after I've worked on them for a couple of weeks, I can't move my arm anymore. You know, so part of it is actually that physical problem that I'm starting to have now with age. But I'm trying to do more of that because I find when I do use, if I've got a really good image, it's so easy just to kind of copy the image. So if you use materials like these, it's much harder to be faithful. But when you're rendering things in paint, you know, it mimics skin so well. It's very easy just to kind of fall into that trap of reproducing what you see, which is not really what I want. You know, so yeah, but that's why it's kind of a physical problem, and also that being set up in my studio with enough time, because what I find is to make paintings like that, I need to know that I've got a few weeks to do nothing else, and I don't often have that luxury because I have to try and earn a living from you know, the curated projects earns me a living. And the teaching earns me a living. So if I didn't do those things, you know, then I wouldn't have any kind of income at all. But they enable me to make the art that I want. You know, someone once said to me, "Why don't you paint Alsatians and flowers and things like that? Because you'll sell more of it." But you know, how soul destroying would that be? Any more questions?
Can I ask one?
Yeah, of course.
Because you use jet on jet, isn't that's really hard?
It is really hard.
And on paper, isn't it? I mean.
Well, I've prepared the paper with gesso that I've made. So the gesso's made up. I sometimes use different recipes, but essentially it's got chalk in it, which gives a bit of a tooth to the paper. You can buy acrylic gesso as well, and it'll work on acrylic gesso.
Gives it a texture.
It does, yeah, and it's the same with silver point. You can't use silver on a piece. You can only use it on something that's prepared. And so apparently the way that they find out that jet is jet rather than coal is by the colour of the mark that it makes when they scrape it onto a piece of porcelain or something, a piece of broken porcelain, or you know, something with a rough surface. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's taken me ages and ages and ages to find out what I can do with it. But because it's so hard, you've got to be really vigorous. You know, it changes the way, because I'm quite interested in mark making. You can't be dead precise with it. You can't rub it out. You've got to scrape it out with a bit of sandpaper or with a knife or something. All these sort of lines here are done with you know, scraping it out with a blade and so on. But I quite like the idea of that physicality and those potentially painful elements because I don't think people pick it up at first, but my work is not happy work, so I don't think it looks miserable at first, but I like the way that maybe some of the ways of making it are potentially quite painful. Like all those 200 stitching, my fingers were... Any more questions?
Well, that's great. Thank you, Linda.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So thanks for coming. Final visiting speaker this semester next week is going to be an architect.